football.
We're going to continue our Hall of Fame hour. We started with Mary Kay Cabot, and now we're going to welcome in the one, the only, the left tackle of all left tackles. It is Joe Thomas. What's up, Joe?
I was hoping he'd have his
Hey,
gold
what's up,
jacket on.
guys? How are you?
Good, Joe.
Joe, good to see you. Where do you keep the gold jacket? Do you ever wear it?
I was making hamburgers on the grill last night with it for the kids for my birthday. So, I mean, I leave it in the house just in case, there's ever a need to throw it on and remind those kids who they should respect and who they should start listening to around this house.
Joe, was your birthday yesterday?
Happy birthday.
It was, yeah.
Happy belated birthday, Joe.
You're 39, right?
You and Flacco,
39.
both born around the same
Joe
time.
Flacco's going to be 39 in a couple days, and he's now leading the Browns.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I'll come back too. If Flacco wins the Super Bowl, I'm his left tackle next year.
Okay, you heard it here
Wait
first.
a second.
You heard it here
that a
first.
promise?
Tweet that out. We got to keep that on the record.
Yeah. How bizarre is it, Joe,
Sigh.
that Joe Flacco is the quarterback of the Browns right now? It's got to be mind-blowing to you.
It does feel weird, and I think Ed Reed maybe made a comment about it last week, and he goes, well, Joe Flacco, he won the Super Bowl for the Ravens, but at least he's not playing for the Steelers. And I thought about that, and I'm like, you know what? It is kind of weird because we have always had this hatred for the Ravens. Obviously, they used to be in Cleveland, and then when I was playing, the Ravens were so dirty, like with Ed Reed and Terrell Suggs and Ray Lewis and Bart Scott. Like, we hated those dudes. And then Jamal Lewis was our running back my first couple years in the NFL, and we just always had this like hated, dirty rivalry between the two of us. But they obviously won way more than we did when we were playing each other, and so we had this kind of little brother thing going on where they didn't even really respect us. So it is weird for me, especially as a former Browns player, to look at Joe Flacco and be cheering for him the way I was, especially last week. And I mean, he played great in the first half, and now it looks like he's probably going to be the starter here the rest of the way and going to be kind of holding our fortunes in his hands. It definitely is strange times here in Cleveland right now, but I guess you could always say that.
There's a rumor, Joe, that if he goes down, the Browns are going to call Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, that's the only thing that would be more bizarre.
That one would be a little tougher to cheer for. I
Yes.
feel like in Cleveland, that one might be even a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Hey, Joe, hindsight is always 20/20, right? But you look at Flacco, and I heard all week about every player giving him ringing endorsements, speaking very highly of him, his football knowledge, and just being able to sit and pick his brain, right? Andrew Berry probably should have had a veteran backup quarterback to start the season behind Deshaun Watson. Is this a learning lesson? Do you see the Cleveland Browns making sure that they have a veteran quarterback behind Deshaun Watson going forward next season and then beyond that?
Well, I think you learn from your experiences, and certainly they didn't expect Deshaun to be injured, and I don't think they expected, honestly, this team to be as talented and as good as they really are. I think they kind of thought like, hey, if Deshaun gets hurt, like the season's over. We got no chance. And it turns out all of a sudden we've got this number one overall defense. We've got this great running game even after Nick Chubb gets hurt. And so I think the calculations kind of changed a little bit, where at first they were hoping to be able to develop DTR. Josh Dobbs was on the roster, and they would rather have young guys that are maybe building for potential long-term backups down the road and let them watch behind Deshaun Watson. But then all of a sudden Deshaun gets hurt, but you have this really good team that still can make a run. And so I think knowing now maybe the quality of the roster going into next season, if we're able to keep most of this team together, which I think we should. I haven't obviously looked at the contract situations going into next year, but I think that's going to be a bigger part of the calculations. Just knowing, one, how much Deshaun Watson has been banged up this season. And he really wasn't a guy that was hurt a bunch during his career before this point. He's had the ACL and he's had a couple other injuries, but it's not like he was a guy that was very fragile, even for a quarterback that ran the football a lot. But just knowing the way he was banged up this year, and then knowing how good the rest of the team is, even when he's not out there, I think the calculations definitely will change. And I think next season, don't be surprised if there is that veteran backup who's maybe a little bit more qualified and experienced to take over in the unfortunate instance if Deshaun does get hurt again.
Joe, obviously, as you said, the Browns defense is very talented. However, the last couple of weeks, they haven't been as good. Denzel Ward hasn't played, and Myles Garrett now banged up. Obviously, those are the two best players on defense. And so it hasn't been as good. I mean, did you realize? Because we didn't realize that how important Denzel Ward is to this defense. Because especially with him out, they have not looked the same.
Yeah, it's time for Denzel Ward to ask for a raise, I think, because I think everybody knew he was a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback. They saw that cornerback, that secondary room, and they realized, okay, we got a great corner in Denzel and Newsome. We've got Martin Emerson Jr., who's playing really, really good. He's physical. He's a little different type of cornerback, but for your third guy, he's excellent. We got a pair of good safeties. But I don't think we realized how important Denzel was at that number one spot. And it makes sense now that you're thinking about it in hindsight, right? Okay, every team in the NFL pretty much has a great number one, but very few guys have good number twos and good number threes. But we were one of the few secondaries that could match up with any receiver group in the NFL because of how quality our 1, 2, and 3 corners were. And then all of a sudden, when you lose your number one guy, now you got your number 2 guy going against number 1, your number 3 going against number 2, and it's a cascading domino effect of each matchup now is precipitously worse on the other team's side. And so I think you do quickly realize like how much impact the loss of your number one cornerback has on a defense that really the reason why they were so great was 1, Myles Garrett and the disruption that he provides up front, and 2, the coverage that they provide in the secondary. And then when they get into a situation where now you have the lead, they're able to just rush the passer and the quarterback can't throw the football. So he's either trying to dirt it or he's hanging on to it for 3 seconds and Myles Garrett is sacking him.
Yeah. Speaking of injuries, Joe, I'm curious your take on this. Like the rules to protect players are better than ever. Players are practicing less than ever, yet it seems like there's more injuries than ever, and especially the quarterbacks. I think if C.J. Beathard starts this week for Jacksonville, I think he'd be like the 53rd different starting quarterback this year, maybe 54. It's a new record. I mean, it's just been crazy. What do you make of it? Is it just a freak season, or is there something more to it?
Yeah, that's something that I've thought a lot about throughout my career, and it is one thing that we talk about every year. And I always kind of reflect back, even when I was playing, and then the years after I retired right away. Everyone's like, "Oh, there's always more injuries now than ever," and I'm not sure, unless somebody really dove into the numbers and the statistics of it, if we could really say, yes, definitively we are losing more. You're right. That's exactly. Yeah. I'm getting there. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
But quarterbacks, you're absolutely right. Not sure why that is. The quarterbacks, there's only 32 starters, right, in the league. So that sample size is going to be a lot smaller than the rest of the league as a whole. I think what's playing into this, the majority of it, is the fact that now we're playing a much more wide open game of football. And so what that leads you to is a lot more of these significant acute injuries, because you got guys like basically running, instead of a highway where you got 4 lanes going in the same direction, now you got all this cross traffic, right? Because you're playing spread out. Your quarterbacks are athletic, so they're running the football more. You're seeing more zone reads, more RPOs. You've got a lot more motions where guys are running full speed horizontally. You got a lot more deep crossing routes, a lot of these play action type concepts. And so I think you're just seeing a lot more collisions where guys aren't seeing each other. And that's causing a lot more of the acute injuries than versus when I played. Like, especially early on, it was a lot more playing with a tight end and a fullback. It was a lot more in the box, smash mouth. You saw the guy, you were going to hit him. There was a lot of big collisions. And I think that type of football probably led itself to more long-term consequences, like those slow overtime, 20, 30 head injuries, head hits every single play or every single game. And then all the like chronic knee pain, joint pain that is caused by like the really tight, 8-9 guy in the box, smash mouth type football. But you didn't see quite as many of those significant acute injuries that we're seeing right now. And so I think it's a combination of how we're playing, but I think there is still something to be discussed about how people aren't practicing as much full contact. They're not playing as much in the preseason. And one thing we used to talk about when we were playing was how you needed to callous your body during training camp, right? You needed to have those hits. And I hated two-a-days as much as anybody, but you got a lot of hits in, and you got pretty used to learning how to get hit, how to hit guys, how to fall, how to get tackled. And I'm not sure that we really know how much that impacted you positively going into the season and how that prepared your body for the beatings that an NFL season would give out.
It does seem counterintuitive to think that more hits would keep you safe, but the way you phrase it, callous your body, you're absolutely right. They're experiencing the large percentage of the hits in game type situations, and it's just tough to prepare for that. Speaking of injuries, I want you to talk about the tackle play for the Cleveland Browns this year. Obviously, they've gone through a number of them. We were talking about Jones, how he's, I think, exceeded his what I had anyhow for his ceiling in his rookie year. Grade the tackles, how they've done this year, and what's really been a rough situation for them, just rotating in and all the injuries.
Yeah, it's been as bizarre of a season for the Browns tackle injuries as any that I could remember. Dawand Jones has played lights out football. I mean, he's played Pro Bowl caliber football from day one, and he's improved from the moment he had to step in there when Jack Conklin got hurt. So just to think that we were able to replace Jack Conklin when he got hurt, and we didn't hardly miss a beat with Dawand. And then all of a sudden now Jed has been injured quite a bit. And so to get James Hudson in there playing pretty good football. So basically you have two backup tackles, and you almost didn't miss a beat with those guys in there. But then those guys are getting hurt too. So the revolving door is so difficult, especially when you're thinking about a position that relies a lot on communication and being on the same page with your guards, but also those tight ends as they're moving in and out. Now, we don't play as much 2-3 tight end football as we did when Kevin Stefanski first got here, or even when I played in the NFL when it was a lot more of that 21 personnel like I talked about earlier, where it was more smash mouth stuff. But you still have a lot of combination blocks, a lot of communication that has to happen up front amongst those guys when you're trying to pick up blitzes. And it's really difficult when you have tackles that are younger, because your guards and your centers are trying to tell them what to do on every single play. And a lot of times they're trying to tell them what to do to tell the tight ends what to do. Because I know one thing about football, those tight ends, they have no idea who they're supposed to block when they line up next to you. And they're always asking you two things. One, it's the snap count. And two is, who do we got to block?
That's great.
Hey, Joe, it's funny you said that, because we were talking about that, and I asked the guys if they thought Dawand Jones was a Pro Bowler. So there's been rumors that the NFL wants the tush push gone. As a former offensive lineman, what's your thoughts on that play? And should it be like something that's out of the NFL next year?
I like it personally because, one, I think we've realized that Philadelphia is uniquely set up to be able to run that play, because a lot of other teams have tried it and their success has not had nearly the amount, or they have not had nearly the amount of success as the Philadelphia Eagles have. So I think the fact that the Eagles have this massive offensive line, they've got Jason Kelsey, a Hall of Fame center who knows how to get low, who create that leverage. But then you also have this huge, strong quarterback, Jalen Hurts. You know, they love talking about how he squats 600 pounds, which is legit. I can't squat 300 pounds right now, and I'm almost probably 30 pounds bigger than him. And so you've got this massive group of humanity, and I don't think it would be fair for the NFL to outlaw that play just because one team is so good at it that it's nearly impossible to stop. And I kind of like the way teams are trying to get creative to stop it, because just the old school method of just lining a bunch of dudes up in the gaps and diving them on the ground doesn't work anymore. Like back in the day when you didn't have the tush push, if you created a pile up front with your defensive line on a quarterback sneak play, it pretty much stopped it, right? Because the quarterback would get stuck and then somebody would come off the edge and tackle him. But now that those guys are behind the quarterback, they're able to basically lift him up and throw him over the top of all the bodies, which is what has made the tush push so successful. It's made it really difficult on a defense, and so they're trying to find different ways to stop it. Yeah. And so I kind of like watching the evolution of that play, and I don't think that the NFL should ban it unless all of a sudden we see like some enormous rash of injuries. But usually those things are self-correcting, because if Jalen Hurts gets hurt running that play, I can bet the Philadelphia Eagles probably won't be thinking about running it that often anymore. True. And at least if they are going to still run it occasionally, they're probably not going to make it as much of a staple as they have so far. But outside of, you know, the other teams that have tried it, we really haven't seen a ton of injuries running that play from the Eagles standpoint. So I think it's something that's great for football right now. And I'd be really disappointed if the NFL outlawed it, especially since it seems like the Eagles are the only team that's mastered it.
I think you're 100% right. I think it's completely lame that people are complaining about it. I love it. I think it's cool.
McNuggets has an idea how you
have an idea to stop it?
Oh.
Yeah, Joe, so I pitched this to Jay Gruden when he came on. Jay Gruden was a big fan of this, said it might be flagged, but you could be the judge. You give a defensive tackle a knife.
Wait a minute.
I thought you were going to come up with a legitimate strategy.
That's going to be a flag.
Is there a rule in the NFL rule book that says you can't have a knife on the field? I'm just saying.
You're
Think
out of your
about
mind.
it.
You're
You're
gonna
out
be
of
at
your mind.
Cuyahoga County Jail at the end of the day,
that's
man.
right. Hey,
I
Joe.
can
Besides,
guarantee you, Jason Kelsey's not thrusting forward like that. If
Yeah.
the defensive tackle
But-
might have a knife and he might not. You just don't know which player has it.
I'm really curious
Why not
about
give him
that
a
play.
grenade? Why
He
would
from
you stop
Cleveland.
at a
He'll be
knife?
thrusting forward.
Give him a machete.
Yeah,
I'm down.
Get
Even
him
better, Joe.
machete.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
machete. Just kill the whole other team. There you
Kill
go.
them
Then
all. Yeah, there you go.
And you stop them. Speaking of which, I think about this, Joe, as a former offensive lineman. I know you're on the outside as a tackle, or as we all try to regroup from Mike's insanity.
Yeah, I can't.
I can't believe he said that.
But
You talk about a rash of injuries,
Just give
Joe.
him a knife. Stab him.
UCSS does not promote violence. I just want the world to know that.
Jason Kelsey on the injury report, stab wound. He's questionable.
Oh my
Jason
God.
Kelsey would probably play with a stab wound.
We know what Mike's airline to be Friday.
Hey,
Aaron Donald.
yeah, right. Hey, Joe, when you get
Joe, you created this monster.
That's right.
You gave him the damn nickname.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Sorry.
Joe,
That's why
when
Joe's
you're-
my guy.
when Jason Kelsey, I think about this. Nobody ever talks about it, but I'm curious. Like on those plays, Jason Kelsey's getting the leverage. He must have thousands of pounds of bodies on top of him. You think the guys ever freak out in those situations? Like that's got to be weird. You have like 10 guys on top of you. I know as a tackle maybe that doesn't happen as much, but I'm sure it did. Like is there a moment where you're like, oh my God, if these guys don't get up, I'm going to die down here?
Yeah, so I remember one time we were playing against Cincinnati and we were going towards away from the tunnels where we came out, and there was a fumble near the goal line around the 5-yard line, and I just happened to be there. I jumped on it, right? And of course on a fumble, especially near the goal line, there's a lot of bodies usually, and so I had 7 dudes jump on me. So at least 1,400 pounds of humanity was laying on top of me, and I was holding onto the ball, but it was also the ball was on my chest, and then I was right on top of it. So the ball was pressing it on my chest from the ground, and I had all that weight on top of me. And it was in that moment where I did lose my breath because I couldn't breathe. My chest was not able to go up and down. And I did feel like I was dying in that moment. But I realized that it would probably last less than 30 seconds. So I would be able to catch my breath. But it does induce that type of panic. However, I think when they do that tush push, since he's not using the ball, he's probably able to get into some type of defensible positions when he's down there, especially the experience that he's had being down there, where he can kind of tighten up his core and his muscles to protect himself a little bit. And I think at this point, the tush push has been so successful that everybody knows it's going to work for the most part. And as soon as it does, those guys are really quick to give up and get back on defense and start thinking about first down.
That's true.
Hey, Joe, I got a question for you, and it's funny, man, because I just thought about this, and this is something I've always wanted to ask you. I think that 2007 Cleveland Browns offense doesn't get the respect it deserves, right? That offense put up points after, of course, the Pittsburgh week one. Going forward, it was just like sky's the limit. Where do you rank that Browns offense of 07 against said offenses 2008 to now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd have to go back and kind of look, but I got to think that we were up near the top, at least, top 3. I can't remember another offense since 2007 that was significantly better. I'm sure there was maybe a couple that could possibly match it, but when you look back at it, I mean, we had Jamal Lewis, I think he ran for 1,200 yards that year. We had Kellen Winslow, who was a Pro Bowl tight end. We had Joe Jurevicius, who was like lights out on third down. Every third down he converted. Braylon Edwards had a ton of touchdowns that year. I want to say like 16. Yeah, a ridiculous number of touchdowns. He was a big deep threat. And then we had some other good role players in there, and we moved the ball really well. We were running the old Don Coryell offense with Rob Chudzinski as our offensive coordinator, and Derek Anderson was a Pro Bowl quarterback. And I think the big key for us with that offense was DA was getting the ball out of his hands. He's not a mobile guy. It's not like we were getting him outside of the pocket. He was just kind of standing there like a statue or a scarecrow, but he could sling it. He had a big arm, and he knew where the football should go. And we had some good creative game plans week in and week out. And actually, after that flop in week 1 against the Steelers when Charlie Fry started, The next week, we put up 51 on Cincinnati, which I don't know if we've scored over 50 since then. No. So you're right. I think that was one of the better offenses, maybe the best offense that we've had since 2007.
Joe, that's all fine and dandy, but give me Deshaun Kaiser.
Yeah, but we didn't make the playoffs. Okay.
Deshaun Kaiser or Johnny Manziel any day of the week. I'll take those guys.
Yeah, they were probably a little more fun to party with. That's about where it ended.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, the 2007 Browns had very little competition.
No. Yeah, that's
true.
There's been a lot of bad offenses.
We've had
then.
some.
Yeah.
Now.
But Derek Anderson, that's the best year by a Browns quarterback. I mean, Baker has had a couple of decent years, but I think that Derek Anderson year was probably the best.
I just know when we talk a lot about, the 2020 Browns, and we talk a lot about that team making the playoffs. Right, but like even though the 2007 Browns didn't make the playoffs, to me, that team is the best, in just my opinion, that's the best team that we've seen since 1999. Like, that offense was lights out all season, right? We should have locked up that playoff game in Cincinnati. We came home, and Joe know this, we came home the very next week. We beat San Francisco, but I think we needed Indy to beat Tennessee. And at this time, this is when Peyton Manning was not playing Week 17. Oh. And we needed help. We didn't control our own destiny.
Who was it, Jim Sorgi? Jim Sorgi?
Yeah, my buddy from Wisconsin, the old Jim
that team
Sorgi.
Don't get the love
he was
deserves,
like, wait a minute, as a backup, I got to play? I thought I was just here to hold the clipboards. This is not fair. This wasn't in my contract.
Not ready for this.
All right, Joe, we got to get a game. So, do you want to explain it, Mike? You want me to explain it?
I'll explain it real quick.
All right,
so,
go ahead.
Joe, I'm assuming at least once in your life you've played blackjack, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the premise of this game is essentially blackjack. I'm going to give you a number you have to get to. I'm going to explain what the parameters are, but don't go over. You tell me when you're done. You don't want another one, and that is the top. So you played in your illustrious career 10,363 consecutive snaps.
Okay.
We're going to see how many other first-round picks the Browns have made since 2011. When you combine their total snap counts in Cleveland, combined to equal 10,363. So just like blackjack, I'll give you a card. You tell me either hit or stay, just like we would in blackjack.
By the way, Joe, we did this as a panel earlier, and we won.
We nailed it.
We won.
Oh,
we were able.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
So no pressure. No pressure.
Or he'll kill you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or he's
Joe
gonna
Thomas might have a knife.
Pull out his knife.
Yeah, when in doubt, just stab him to death.
Yeah.
All right, Joe.
Mikey McMurder.
That's good, Earl.
So we start with just Joe Thomas. We call it the bucket game, Joe. So you'll see, here's what it looks like. We're going to try to even it out. How many other Browns first-round picks and their snap counts just in Cleveland equal 10,363, which is the number of consecutive snaps you played. Let's start with Johnny Manziel. Did Johnny Manziel play 10,000 snaps as a Cleveland Brown?
Hit.
Johnny Manziel and Barkevious Mingo. Did those two play 10,000 snaps as the Cleveland Brown?
Hit.
Johnny Manziel, Barkevious Mingo, and Cameron Irving. 10,363 snaps.
Hit.
Johnny Manziel, Barkevious Mingo, Cameron Irving, and Brandon Weeden.
Hit.
Johnny Manziel, Barkevious Mingo, Cameron Irving, Brandon Weeden, and Justin Gilbert.
Oof.
Hit.
Johnny Manziel, Barkevious Mingo, Cameron Irving, Brandon Weeden, Justin Gilbert, and Corey Coleman.
Hit.
Johnny Manziel, Barkevious Mingo, Cameron Irving, Justin Gilbert, Corey Coleman, Brandon Weeden, and Danny Shelton.
Okay. Hit, but we're getting closer.
Johnny Manziel, Barkevious Mingo, Cameron Irving, Brandon Weeden, Justin Gilbert, Corey Coleman, Danny Shelton, and Phil Taylor.
I'm going to stay there because I think Phil played quite a few snaps. And the last couple guys had a couple years at least.
I'm doing the mental math here. Joe, you were very close.
You don't have this written down, McNuggets? Come on.
Well,
this is a scripted game.
Yeah,
well, no,
you're
short. The answer is he's short, unfortunately. You needed one more player. Add Jabril Peppers. I was trying to see how much those 8 added up to. But those 8, and I can do it on the fly here, added up to – oh, you were close, Joe. You missed it by 1,000. Those 8, Phil Taylor, Danny Shelton, Corey Coleman, Justin Gilbert, Brandon Weeden, Cameron Irving, Barkevious Mingo, and Johnny Manziel added up to 9,101 snaps. If you added Jabril Peppers – that was where the correct official blackjack line was.
That would have been 9,900.
Yeah. You know,
I should have listened to the rules because I thought it was like blackjack. You wanted to be the closest without going over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
that
is,
was
yeah,
the
you
rule.
still
You could have
could've fit
taken
Peppers in
Peppers
there.
and still been under.
You would have still been on.
Oh, Peppers didn't put you over 10,000? I thought.
No.
Man.
Peppers
No.
put you with Peppers.
Man.
So Manziel, Mingo, Irving, Whedon, Gilbert, Coleman, Shelton, Taylor, Peppers. 10,220 career snaps. Is the
Oh,
average.
right there. Wow. I guess I thought Jabril Peppers had a lot more snaps for the Browns, but I guess I was wrong.
And Joe, we were wrong on Phil Taylor. Phil Taylor had a lot less than we thought because he must have missed more time with injury than we remember.
Okay.
Because he didn't get his. We had thought he had a lot more snaps than he did, but it's amazing. A lot of bad draft picks after you.
You ruined it
There's
for a
no
lot of
doubt.
guys.
Yeah.
A lot of swings and misses in that bucket right there. A lot of holes in that bucket, dear Liza.
Yeah, you aren't kidding.
Yeah.
Both an endorsement of you and an indictment on the
Yeah.
Browns' many general managers during that stretch.
Great,
Joe, it's
Joe.
always great having you
Thanks.
on, man. The Hall of Famer, Joe Thomas. Joe, join us again soon, okay?
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. And one quick plug on Friday, I'm going to be in Cleveland at the Candy Cane Ball. It's in Ohio City at the Trust Building. You can still get some tickets, and it goes to gifts towards underprivileged kids in the holiday season. So go check it out. I'll be there. You can come celebrate with me and dress like the Grinch.
Where
Hey,
can we get, where can
Joe,
we get
send
tickets?
Send me or text me a
Yeah.
link, and we'll make sure we tweet it out for you.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. I was unprepared, unfortunately, but I'll send you the link. You can also see it. It's on my social media. But doing good for the community and having a good time. So hope you guys
Awesome.
join me.
Yeah,
Cool
it is.
as
It's a
best.
great cause. Joe doesn't need any help selling tickets when it comes to Cleveland.
People will be there, yeah.
Joe, good luck with the event. We'll talk soon, all right?
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Joe.
I appreciate it.
Yep,
Thanks, Joe.
absolutely.
Always
Great
great talking
Joe
to Joe.
Thomas.